Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bruin Dash, the UCLA football show on Dash Sports TV. I am one of your hosts back again, Sam Connon, and I am joined once again by Jack Perez. Jack, how are you doing today?
Great, Sam. It's getting a little chilly here in Westwood, so I got to throw on a sweatshirt for the first time last night. Having a blast.
I'm in the same boat. It's a little windy past couple days, but I'm surprised it was warmer in Boulder, which is weird. So we'll start off at the top of today's show talking about that game. UCLA loses to Colorado 48-42. It was shootout. It was all over the place. It was messy. We'll give you our thoughts and try to break down what happened, and then we'll look forward to this weekend. UCLA's game against Utah got pushed from Friday to Saturday. We'll break down the standing of that game right now and what it could possibly look like, and then we'll talk about UCLA's future in the Rose Bowl. Attendance numbers have been down past couple of years, but there is a new stadium in town, and Jack is has a very interesting take about how the Bruins could maybe set up residency there. But for now, we will get to season opener of the very unorthodox 2020 season. Like we were saying, UCLA lost only by 6 points, but a lot went wrong in that game. So, Jack, give me your first impressions of really the first time we've seen the Bruins this year.
I mean, they looked like a completely different team in the first half than they did in the second half. That first half, they came out flat. The defense had a good stop actually on the very first drive. They forced a punt, but Kyle Phillips fumbled the punt return. They got it within 20 yards, put it in a touchdown. Next possession, DTR throws an interception. Follow that up with a DTR fumble, a Demetric Felton fumble later in the half. You have 4 turnovers in the first half. That is a recipe for disaster for any team in the country. I don't care who you are. If you have 4 turnovers in the first half, you're not playing winning football. UCLA got down a lot. Now, they had a remarkable comeback, and we've seen them have comebacks before. They had that Washington State game last year. No one's ever going to forget that. They had the Texas A&M game a few years ago. Maybe UCLA football is just a team that loves to come back. They like to get down early on and then magically, miraculously come back. But that didn't happen here. As well as DTR played in the second half, as well as Greg Dulcich was a huge stud for most of the game. He now leads the Pac-12 in receiving yards from the tight end position. It was a flat performance from UCLA all around. And, I mean, you can't come out to a 6-7 game season and have a bad half. That's not you don't have any leeway. In a 12-game season, yeah, you have a bad half, that's one loss. Okay, get on to the next game. This is 1/6 of your regular season already gone up in flames, and this was a game UCLA was supposed to win. Sam, you went to Boulder. What did you see from the press box there?
It was interesting for sure. Like you said, defense made a stop on the first drive, and first thought was, "Wow, this is different." UCLA's defense the past 2 years, 3 years really has been putrid, really awful, and because for a multitude of reasons, we were talking about maybe things would be different this year. Lose some faces, bring in some other ones. It was supposed to be different, and that first drive showed that. And then that Phillips fumble happened, and it just spirals out of control. Field position was huge. I feel like I was looking at one side of the field for the entire first half. I mean, Colorado had 5 touchdowns, but I mean, you look. They started at the UCLA 25. They started at the UCLA 1. Their third touchdown, they started at their own 24. That was an actual long drive. And their fourth, they started at the UCLA 7. So it's really the defense did not play well. They played very poorly. But when they get set up in UCLA's red zone almost every single time, there's only so much you can expect to do. And then for the rest of the game, you have uh, Carl Durrell, Sam Neuer running that offense with a lead, and it was it just goes to show why UCLA was able to come back against Washington State last year, which I also went to, and the energy was just so different at that game because Washington State running the air raid, being aggressive, still throwing the ball, going all out, leading by 32 points, 31 points. Colorado wasn't doing that. They were running the ball, just shoving it down your throat, run, 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 QB draw, short throw, QB draw, run, and that's why UCLA could not force a turnover. At Washington State, they stripped the ball, they had interceptions, they had special teams touchdowns, but they in Boulder they couldn't turn it over, and that's why they couldn't come back. Dorian Thompson Robinson was bad in the first quarter. He was bad for most of the first half. but he kind of brought it together. He opened the second half with that 65-yard run. He had the touchdown to Mike Martinez with a minute and a half left to make it a 6-point game. But the thing is, that doesn't matter when you're down by 28 points. It'd be one thing if your defense could strip the ball, get you the ball back, give you good field position. But when you're forced to make long drives every single time's not on your side, and it's not going to happen. So it just wasn't in the cards for UCLA, despite definitely a better second half.
Yeah, let's be honest. This defense, all preseason, we'd heard them hyping themselves up. Can't be much worse than last year, finishing 129th in pass defense, going up against Sam Neuer, who was a safety last year, hadn't started a game since 2015 when he was in high school, going up against the backup running back for Colorado because their starter is now out for quite a while. They didn't have their starting wide receiver. They lost their best two wide receivers to the NFL last year, and then their best wide receiver coming back this year was also out for the game. And UCLA's defense still could do absolutely nothing. It looked like a performance from last year. And they talked a lot about Coach Brian Norwood coming in, taking over the defensive backs room, coming over from Navy, where they had a pretty solid defense, coming in, changing the system, going to a more 4-2-5. I mean, you couldn't really see it that often, but it didn't look like it worked. And I predicted before the game that this would be a shootout. I thought a lot of the defenses across the Pac-12 would be a little rusty. Some of these new quarterbacks coming in, some of these new offenses being implemented would throw teams off, and it would take them a while to adjust. But you can't give up 48 points to Colorado, who's arguably one of the weaker offenses in the conference. I mean, obviously not now. They look like they were one of the best when they went up against the UCLA defense. But how is UCLA supposed to contend with, maybe not Utah this next week, but you got Oregon on a Friday next week in Eugene? How are you supposed to compete with an offense that looked like they just dismantled Stanford? How are you going to deal with the USC team, an Arizona State team later down the road where they didn't have great week ones, but we know they can bounce back. We know they can put up points against weak defenses. UCLA has no answer to that right now. There's no one on that defense that's really taking it upon themselves to elevate this team to a next level. And if that continues to happen, that's on the defensive coordinator's head right now, but it's also got to be on Chip Kelly's head. He's had this problem for the last couple of years, and nothing has changed. Nothing at all has changed. And you can't go into Boulder in a game that you're favored by 6.5 points and go down double digits, go down by 20, almost 30 points in week one. That is a recipe for disaster for a very short season.
Yeah, and the worst part is that you kept harping on it. Nothing has changed. We talked about it. I've talked about it at great length. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He is going to take a leap. How he's going to be different. He's better. He had 300 yards to the air, another 100 on the ground, 5 total touchdowns. That's great. That was one of the more productive games of his career. He's better, but he's still himself. He has the same shortcomings that he has the past year and a half. Just turning the ball over, making the right reads, bobbling the ball when he is making those reads and leading to those kind of untouched fumbles, which have happened too many times. And then on the other side of the ball, this was happening when Jim Moore was here, especially his last year when Rosen was here in 2017. That every running back who played UCLA looked like an NFL caliber running back. And Broussard just won Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week, despite never having started a game at running back. That's tough to swallow. And the one thing that is different, though, which is weird, last year the defense would give up play after play after play of just 8 yards or something. There were big plays let up in the ground game and the passing game that really happened last year. The defense, while they still are horrible against the pass and run, as we saw, is in a different way. It's a very boomer bust defense where they had, I think, 8 tackles for loss, which is, I mean, that's very good. They made a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage, whether it was Carl Jones, it was Quantrez Knight, Osa Digizua. There were some great plays in the backfield getting to where as he was trying to run or wrapping up Broussard behind the line or guys going out for screens and getting up on the, but they were playing so much the zone coverage against a mobile QB that Neuer was able to scramble for 15 plus yards. They had 6 chunk plays on the ground, another 8 through the air. So the changes weren't enough. There were changes, but they haven't changed the product, and that was the issue on Saturday.
And I think a big thing that we are kind of looking at, the turnovers did kill the defense, especially early on. It killed a lot of their motivation. Like we talked about, they had that first stop, and it looked like maybe things are changing. But when your offense is giving the other team the ball within 20 yards of the end zone, there's not much you can do. Yes, you can try to hold them to 3 points. After the DTR fumble, they held them to a punt. You know, there's you can stop them, but it gets really tough if you have to do that multiple times a game. And Dorian did look like he had a couple times where he was throwing it into the defense, and he was lucky he didn't have a pick or two more. You know, there were a couple times where it went right through a Colorado guy's hands. But overall, he looked really impressive. He looked like when they got him on the ground, when they were rolling him out, when they were letting him go deep, were the times where he looked really good, you know, or if there was a little screen pass. When they're asking him to go mid range, he just couldn't do it. And that's not his strength. It's never been his strength. Chip Kelly should know this. Everyone on the planet knows this. Everyone that has watched UCLA football can tell you what DTR's strengths and weaknesses are. But yet they refuse to adapt to that early enough. And you saw that once they adapted, once they got into the locker room at halftime and they really sat down, changed up their game plan just a little bit to get him on the ground more, immediately, almost immediately, he had a huge run for a touchdown. How how does Chip Kelly not see that this is an athletic, talented guy that has a cannon for an arm, but yet you're going to have him do these mid-range things where he's going to get picked off because he got picked off a lot last year. He fumbled the ball a lot last year. We know he's turnover prone, so work to his advantages.
Yeah, I mean UCLA outscored Colorado 28-13 in the second half. That's pretty good. That's promising. And the touchdowns that UCLA did have, you had the read that led to the 65-yard touchdown for Dorian, and then you also had the two screen passes that had offensive linemen running out and paving the way. DTR would roll out, he would hit those short passes. That's great. He just can't lock on to guys like he did with his interception and his other near interception. And I mean, that's just anyone really, but he can't be that pocket passer that Chip is asking him to be. Is weird because if you're a really good coach with a really defined system, this isn't really Chip's system. Back at Oregon, he didn't run it. But if you're a coach who's dead set on running this as your offense, then you say, okay, this is my system, this is my offense, and I am going to pick the quarterback and tailor the quarterback to that. UCLA doesn't have any options. Yankoff, who is also a dual threat, we're not sure how he would fit in exactly, moved to receiver. I don't think you're going with Artopius or Chase Griffin right now. So deal with what you have. You can't be stubborn as Chip Kelly. You have to play with what you have, and you have to play to your players' strengths, especially when they're as talented as DTR is.
Yeah, and let's be honest, there's no coach in this country that shouldn't be able to adapt. I mean, we saw Nick Saban at Alabama for years would just run the ball over and over and over, and they didn't have great quarterbacks all the time. They had game managers. But all of a sudden, you get guys like Tua, you get guys like Jalen Hurts that come in, and Mac Jones now, and they're just passing the ball. They realize that the pass is way more efficient. They've kind of weaned themselves off the running back. If Nick Saban can adapt, Chip Kelly should be able to adapt. Because Nick Saban can get literally almost any recruit in the country he wants. And Chip Kelly has to play with who he's got. So you've got to adapt, and you've got to adapt now.
And speaking of teams adapting, we'll take that and move on to our next topic, which is UCLA's upcoming game against Utah. And the Utes, they are having some troubles with COVID-19, had some positive tests. It's been a few days. They say they're on track to play, but a lot going on with the local government, the university, the program. The game's still on for now. Utah has kind of blown out UCLA the last 3 years. See if it happens again this year, but they may have to play with some guys in the scout team, according to Coach Kyle Whittingham. Either way, they're missing a lot of starters from last year. Major turnover on both sides of the ball. So, Jack, kind of give me your thoughts on how you think this game could play out and the major factors going into it.
Okay, first off, let's get this out of the way. The Pac-12 has not handled COVID very well week one. I mean, you had 2 canceled games, but not even that, just the hypocrisy kind of from program to program. I guess maybe not hypocrisy, but it doesn't seem like the rules. Yeah, inconsistencies. It's different everywhere. I mean, UCLA last Friday, it revealed that they had a positive test within the football program. And the week before, there had been a positive test, but they had retested and it came back as a false positive. But this week, it was a confirmed positive. But Nothing happened there. UCLA is still allowed to travel to Boulder, still allowed to play. I mean, the player didn't go. They're still in quarantine, according to Chip Kelly, but it was just totally fine for UCLA. Meanwhile, Cal, not allowed to play. Meanwhile, Utah, who, I mean, no one really knows their reports. Their reports aren't very public. No one really knows what's going to happen there. So if that continues to happen to Utah, if their contact tracing, if their guys that keep testing positive aren't allowed to come, this is a must-win game for UCLA. If you're playing against scout team players, I don't care what school it is. If you're playing against the scout team guys that haven't been getting first-team reps, especially in an abbreviated season, especially in an abbreviated training camp when they didn't really have a spring camp, you have to win this game. I don't care if it's Utah. I don't care if it's USC. I don't care if it's Colorado. I don't care if it's Alabama. If you don't win this game, this is a nightmare season. You're 0-2 right off the bat. So UCLA needs to come out with the fire that they had in the second half. And I believe they will. I believe they really learned that, hey, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a great athlete, but sometimes he makes the wrong reads. So let's not put him in situations where he has to make these tough reads. Simplify the playbook. You didn't have a training camp. Go down a few plays. Don't try to throw in extra tricks, throw in extra fancy things. Run this game. Control possession and run this game. Sam, what are you thinking will happen this Saturday?
I think for now, Utah's favored, and they will be going to the game for a lot of reasons. I mean, since I've been a student at UCLA, Utah has absolutely dismantled the Bruins every single season. They're basically averaging 45 points a game to UCLA's, 10? Their last three matchups, you had an absolute disaster in Salt Lake last year. Year before, Friday night game here at the Rose Bowl, and the year before when Josh Rosen mysteriously maybe had a concussion, missed that game, and it totally blew up in their face. So Utah is UCLA's kryptonite. Had a lot of kryptonites. It's not like they're a powerhouse, but that one especially has been a thorn in their side. So even with these scout team players, even with whoever it is, whether it's Huntley or Moss or Blackman gone, is a lot of faith in UCLA when Kyle Whittingham's on the other sideline. When it comes to how they adjust their play calling after this debacle against Colorado, I wouldn't say to tone down the tricks and all that, because that's what works well. This team is fast. Dorian is fast. Demetric Felton is fast. Kaz Allen's fast. You have speed. And Felton and Phillips, he's pretty fast too. As a slot guy, Coda's got some speed. You need to move these guys around, run a spread, a lot of motion, a lot of options. That's the way you have to go. So I think where the playbook gets too complicated is when Chip Kelly tries running it like a pro style and has maybe too many route trees for these receivers, these option routes downfield, which I think, I mean, Greg Dulcich, you said, had a great game, and he totally did, leading the Pac-12 in receiving. He should have had 200 yards, and he had, 125? There were so many times where he broke left and DTR through right, through to the wrong shoulder, wide open, over the middle. Just there was some kind of miscommunication, whether it was the route as a whole or whether there was an option and the quarterback and receiver read the secondary differently. I think that's where you have to adjust this offense and just say, okay, you guys are 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. You're athletic. You're going to be long run, but you can't trust these guys to make pro style reads on every single play at every single level on the offense. So Utah's a good team. And to beat them, UCLA is going to have to play pretty much a perfect game. They can't turn the ball over 4 times. They can't miss open receivers. Have to keep Dorian's jersey clean. It'll take a lot. It's possible. I mean, Utah's a 3.5-point favorite. UCLA has shown that they have a high-powered offense. Defense has got to get better, take care of the ball, and it's in the car.
Yeah, but like I said, this has to be a fast start. There is no coming back from a Utah team because not only have you already established that you know how to play offense in the second half of that Colorado game. Granted, DTR did go 9 of 21, but some of those were huge plays. He also had that 65-yard rushing touchdown, and some of those passes were forced because they were trying to come back from a big deficit. But this Utah team hasn't played. They got their game canceled against Arizona. So they're going to come out rusty in the first half especially. They've got no experience. They've had to cancel a few practices. If you don't take advantage of that and you are losing 14-0, 21-0, 21-7, you're down multiple touchdowns going into the second half, it's over. There's no coming back from this. Colorado was a weaker defense, and their offense kind of sputtered a little bit at the end too. This Utah team won't have that. Whittingham has established a program that does not allow these teams to come back. That really suffocates teams. I mean, last year, like you said, they lost 49-3, or they won 49-3 against UCLA. It was There was nothing that UCLA's offense could do. You can't come back from a team like that. Washington State's defense wasn't great, and Washington State would still run the air raid the entire time. So there's a chance you come back against a team like that. You have to come out strong, UCLA, and if you don't, an 0-2 start and a trip to Eugene on a Friday is staring you in the face.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking about this before the show started, but it's a tough way to start a season with a loss because it just really defines your season. You play 6 regular season games and then one after against the North opponent probably, or rescheduled, whatever it is. You have to win the Pac-12 South, starting with a loss, you need whoever you lost to go 3-2 the rest of the way, and you win out. So obviously, when you're 0-1, you don't control your own destiny. But even if you do, like, that's just a lot to ask. I know Colorado can go 3-2, like that could definitely have 500, 4-2. You could, but I mean, I don't think UCLA is going 5-1 in these 6 games. But it just, for all these teams, for Arizona State, it puts them in a big hole. Arizona State can go 5-1 and still not win it because that one loss. See, and UCLA starting in a hole, it's just not how you want to do it. Obviously, you never do, but 9-game conference season, you have 8 games to make up ground. Now you only have 5. That's tough. You have to struggle against that, and who knows if they can get out of it. I mean, their offense looked good in the second half, but so much up in the air.
Yeah, I did predict before the season. I got a little bit of flack for it, that UCLA had a chance to win the Pac-12 South, but I obviously started that prediction with a big win against Colorado, a tone-setting win against Colorado, and then coming back and beating Utah on the Friday. Now we got Utah on a Saturday. That's an extra day for Chip Kelly to try to implement something. But this team, if they come out flat, it's over for the season, basically. Chip Kelly will have to pull out a miracle for them to win the division, of course, but to even claw them back to 500, because you still got games at Arizona State, you got at Oregon, you've got USC in that last regular season game. Those are tough teams. I mean, USC looked flat, and they still won their game. Arizona State blew it against them, but they look like a
Jaden Daniels wasn't very good anyway.
Jaden Daniels wasn't very good, but Sam might have a little bit of vendetta against him. But Arizona State is still a very good team, a team that a lot of experts predicted would finish second in the South, and you have to go to Tempe and beat them. That is a tough road ahead.
So, quick number here. What are the odds that this game, or the percentage chance that this game gets played on Saturday as scheduled?
50-50. I'm not hopeful. I've always said the first step to a cancellation of a game is the postponement of it. And granted, only got postponed one day. That's reasonable. It was a Friday game in the first place, which I wasn't very thrilled about. Now it's a Saturday game. But I'm about 50-50. What are you saying, Sam?
I'm in the same boat with you, 50-50. So if you're watching with us live, chip in with your thoughts on what could happen against Utah at the Rose Bowl on Saturday, if it happens, if you think it's going to happen, and really what the fallout of this Colorado game is. But with that, we'll move on to our third and final topic. Jack, he wrote a column for Sports Pac-12, a partner of Dash Sports TV. They're publishing written content from our hosts. It's over on their site. You can find them on Twitter at Sports Pac-12. But Jack's column this week was about UCLA and its relationship with the Rose Bowl. Maybe 45-minute to an hour, 15-minute drive away from campus. Attendance numbers down. So, Jack, what should UCLA do with its stadium debate or debacle, whatever, moving forward?
All right, let's get this out of the way first. I don't hate the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl is a magical place, especially if you're a UCLA fan. I remember the first time I walked into the Rose Bowl as a student was for the Texas A&M game. I had been accepted. We hadn't started school yet, but I walked into the student section, Texas A&M game, and I was in love. I've gone there a few more times as a student. Haven't gone there yet as a reporter, but hopefully will later this season. It's a magical place. But even in that Texas A&M game, It was a ghost town for a lot of it. I mean, student section, there was no one around me for quite a while. People showed up late, and I know that's an LA thing that people show up late, but it doesn't help when you have to bus over your students from campus going on these ridiculously high traffic freeways all for an hour, and that is one of the worst bus rides, especially in the LA heat that I've ever been on. There was no air conditioning. So, you
Sounds
see,
like you hate the Rose Bowl.
it does not. I do not hate the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl, though, is also a little outdated. It's a very old stadium. There's been games being played there forever. So UCLA needs to move to another part of LA. And that other part of LA now has a multi-billion-dollar stadium that was just built. It is a super nice place. It's right down the freeway from UCLA's campus. It is a lot closer. Even in traffic times, it will take you 30, 45 minutes. And that is SoFi Stadium, the new stadium that both the Chargers and Rams play at. Sam and I both toured there when we were invited to visit when they were showing off the LA Bowl. Larry Scott was there. It was a great experience. That stadium is massive and is part of a massive entertainment center that is going to be around that area. And what better way to signify that you are a big part of LA than to be in a massive entertainment center? Because the Rose Bowl's in Pasadena. That is way out there. It is super far away from campus. It is disconnected, and we can't build a stadium on campus because there's no room. There's no room and no money to do that. So why not go right down the 405, hit up SoFi, ask them if we can play games there, and make that and start a new tradition. Start a new UCLA tradition at SoFi Stadium.
Yeah, I really don't see the point in that. Because so attendance is an issue. The fact that the Rose Bowl is so far away from campus is an issue. How many students who don't go to games would say that they don't go because the Rose Bowl is not nice? They'll have to hop on the 405 and go south to go to SoFi, taking over 30 minutes. Sure, it's a little bit shorter, but come on. If you can't have a stadium on campus, you might as well play in a cultural, historical landmark like the. I don't see what the point would be in ditching it just so you can say you play in a new stadium. It wouldn't solve the attendance numbers. It wouldn't solve the issues on the field. Stick with the tradition you have. Don't be a nomad. Don't hop around for all these flashy new things. You have Wasserman, you have Mo Austin on campus. That's great. You're spending a lot of money putting money into the program. But what's the point if people are still going to have to hop on buses and drive there and really just take up residence somewhere else? Do what you're doing. UCLA and the Rose Bowl are synonymous. They are that is their home. If they go to SoFi, they'd just be taking up shop in Chargers and Rams territory. But what wouldn't be smart, wouldn't be fun. Build a stadium on campus or stick in the Rose Bowl. That's pretty much it.
Let's not act like LA is a Chargers or Rams area because both those teams were out of the city.
Not a UCLA area either.
It would definitely be a UCLA area. I mean, USC controls the entire middle part of the town, where we have Pasadena, which is 45 minutes to an hour away.
Okay, in Inglewood, where SoFi Stadium is, are there more USC fans or UCLA fans?
Who knows, Sam? But we can generate fans there. Also, you say about the attendance.
Waste of time.
About the attendance issues. The Rose Bowl holds about 90,000 people. SoFi on a regular day is about 70,000. Maybe it doesn't fix everything with the attendance issues, but at least the stadium feels a little bit more full. We had about 45,000 fans per game last year. That's a half full Rose Bowl. Yes, that's not a completely full SoFi Stadium, but at least it feels a little bit better. You get a little bit more of a fan interaction. There's going to be billions of dollars poured into that area to build new entertainment things, to build new shopping centers, to build stores, all of that stuff. You act like people won't go out there for that and then hop into the game? Of course they will. You can't really do that at the Rose Bowl right now. Yes, Pasadena's there, but it's not the same experience at all as being right there, hop to a store, go to the game, hop back out. Why? I don't see the problem with that, Sam. And UCLA act like they've had the Rose Bowl forever. We haven't had the Rose Bowl for that long. We used to play at the Coliseum all the time. The Rose Bowl is not our permanent forever home. All right, there's time and a place for change. And what better time and place for change than being millions of dollars in a budget deficit and trying to re-spark interest in honestly, a flailing football program?
Well, the solution is win. That's it. Recruit, win, and then people will show up to your games. Simple as that. So if you want to read Jack's full thoughts on that topic, you can head over to sportspac12.com. Find them on Twitter at sportspac12. All of the Dash Sports TV written articles are up on that site. And then you can find links to them as well as clips of our show on dashsports.tv website. You can follow us at Dash Sports TV on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Sam Connon. You can follow Jack at Jack C. Perez. That'll pretty much do it for today. Thank you so much for joining us live. You joined us live or watching the recorded version if you're watching the recorded, or if you're listening to our podcast version, brand new. Find that on all your favorite podcast platforms. So subscribe, listen to those every week. Jack and I will be back next Monday to talk about what maybe does or doesn't happen in this Utah game. So, Jack, thanks so much for joining me.
No problem, Sam. And don't forget, Sam Connon this week will be on Bruin Dash Special Edition Friday talking to our friends from Ute Dash about the game. So catch that too.
Hopefully we're talking about a game and not a cancellation. So fingers crossed for that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.